Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today's video I'm excited to do. It's going to be a new episode in my Inspired Squad series. If you are new to this series, this is a very community-driven episode that I like to do on my channel every single month, where I have you write in whether you're looking for advice, whether you're looking to share a triumph, or you just want to get something off of your chest. This is the place where we can do it, and we can respond to each other, whether it be in the comments of this video or through the Google form that is always linked in this video, and we can share, help one another, give our advice, give our feedback, and then I share them here in this video. So this is episode number 3 for the Inspired Squad series, and let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, welcome. So if you're new here, like I said, I kind of explained a little bit how the Inspired Squad series goes. So I do always have that Google form linked in this description box here, and you can write in anything that you want to share. Whether it is a hard time that you are going through, you are looking for feedback on life, career, love, something positive you want to share, a triumph, something that you've overcame, or just anything at all, anything that you are enjoying recently, anything you want to share like that, you can put into the Google form. And then how I'm doing these videos is the first half, I have some responses from last month's video, and then I have some new topics to discuss. If you do want to write into the comment section, that's always such a great thing. I think the comment section in these videos are just absolutely fantastic, but I do understand that the comments are public. Sometimes not everyone wants to comment publicly or ask for advice publicly, share a story publicly, which is why we have the Google form, which is completely anonymous. I do not even know who is writing in there. And the point of this video is I am a very community-driven person and a very community-driven channel, and this is kind of also a special, like, safe place, especially for women. We've talked a lot about subjects like birth control, motherhood, marriage, careers, different things like that. And I'm such a big advocate on women supporting women, and that is kind of where the idea for this series stemmed from. A little bit more podcast style. I just filmed them in my bedroom, and there's nothing that you have to be looking at the screen for, so you can pop this video on while you are cleaning, going for a walk, doing the dishes, anything like that. And if you hear something that resonates with you, I encourage you to comment or to write in to the Google form. It's a place where we can all help one another. Again, if you're new here, I am primarily a beauty focused channel, but I've been trying to incorporate different topics onto my channel recently, and topics that I feel like I am also seeking out in my life right now. I actually just finished filming a video on what I feel are my top 5 financial mistakes, so that video is already live on my channel. I do definitely a lot of beauty videos, some fashion around the home. I like to do vlogs, but I do post every single day on YouTube, so I hope that you will subscribe and stick around. But like I said, for the first half, I'm going to go through some of the responses that we got from last month's video. I will have timestamps down below because this video and this series does touch on, harder topics that I understand that not everyone might be able to listen to right now, but the timestamps are there so you can go forward, go back, whatever it is that you need, because we are going to start off talking about mental health, and we've been having a conversation in these videos about mental health and medication. I also have some on birth control, and so that's what we're going to jump into first. One response I got was about mental health medication. It really does help. I had depression and anxiety for many years, and it caused me to not be able to finish my master's degree or get a job before my mom finally got me to agree to therapy. I wouldn't be able to do it myself. After several sessions and therapists who didn't help, I went to a psychiatrist and got meds. It was what I needed. Now I have a job and able to get out with friends without anxiety and even go on trips with them. So in the last videos, we were talking about kind of the stigma around mental health medication, and I'm someone who has struggled with mental health throughout the majority of my life. I started therapy when I was 11 years old. I have been on and off medication for mental health throughout, and I've had good experiences with meds. I've had not so good experiences with meds. Currently, I'm kind of going down a more, I work with a naturopathic doctor, so I actually am doing kind of a more herbal route for my anxiety and depression, and I found that it's actually something that's been working really well for me. So I think something, even just reading this comment, is just giving it a shot. Trying something. Just because you do try something for a little bit, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that you have to always continue with it. But keeping an open mind and trying something new, and it sounds like this worked out really well. And even saying several sessions and therapists who didn't help, I've had a lot of therapists in my life who I just didn't feel like I clicked with, or I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of that. And again, you don't have to stay with one therapist forever. You can find a new one, but I'm definitely a big advocate also for therapy too. I think the important thing with talking about the mental health medication and the stigma behind it is that no one else is in charge of your mental health. I had a friend say that to me the other day, and it really resonated with me. No one else is in charge of your mental health, and no one else knows how you feel and the thoughts that you have in your mind. So no one else can tell you how to handle your mental health, whether you should be on medication or not, whether you should see a therapist or not. No one else gets to control your mental health. That is all you. And it is so, so important. Another response says, I'm responding to the mental health piece, and I want to be very clear that I support the use of medication 100%. I also want to rant a little about how inaccessible mental health services are, because for about the last 2 years, I was in such a dark mental place, despite life being objectively better than ever, and going through all the hoops needed to get mental health help. But when you're too depressed to engage in your hobbies or with your loved ones, it's nearly impossible. But I think for many people, depression and anxiety can be episodic or situational. I was in a perfect storm of hating my job, hating where I live, etc. And it's hard to not be depressed when life isn't what you pictured. I didn't get medication, but now I've been actively building a plan for next steps with a timeline, and work has gotten better. It's not perfect every day, but I'm feeling myself come out of it. There is hope even if you're struggling and for whatever reason cannot get the additional support you deserve. And I think if you're depressed and anxious, it's worth taking account of your life and seeing if there is something that is out of sync with your needs and values. Sometimes depression is a chemical imbalance, sometimes it's a symptom of trauma that we never dealt with coming up, and sometimes it's because we need to change our lives. There's a lot that I like about this response, because I do enjoy that she's, states supporting medication and, saying that sometimes depression and anxiety is because of a chemical imbalance. I think that's a good way of honoring that, because again, as someone who has been clinically diagnosed with depression, that's something that I think is very important to be aware of. But like you said, there are times where it can be situational. And I know for me, I go through situations with my mental health where it's like, I'm just in a hard place right now, but I am not depressed. And sometimes I have to really sit and think, I'm 35 years old now, and I've gone through so many doctors and so many therapists and so many psychiatrists and the whole works. I kind of am pretty in tune with myself now to know when I am actually depressed and when I'm just kind of going through a harder time, going through it, but also touching on the fact that mental health services are not accessible. Oftentimes they are not affordable. And I think it is such a huge, huge setback. I think it's a huge disadvantage to a lot of people who struggle. Something that I would love to see a change for. The same way something like eating healthier, it seems like a lot of those foods are so expensive compared to fast food or really sugary foods. And a lot of times people who want to, take care of their health in that way, it's just not as accessible. And it's something that is very mind-boggling to me. Our healthcare system in general in the US is very mind-boggling to me. I'll be clear about that. But I do like saying, taking a look at your life, seeing if there's anything that is out of sync with your needs and values, and how she said, actively building a plan for next steps with a timeline. I'm someone who very firmly believes in goal planning. I'm someone who really does believe in something like journaling, where you can look back and see, hey, during this time, I wasn't doing so well. Is there anything that I can see that was happening around that time that was maybe a reason for that and something that I can change going forward? I think that we have a lot that we can do on our own, and it's something that I kind of touched about in the financial video as well. The mistakes that I made weren't me just willy-nilly making the mistakes. I just wasn't aware, I wasn't educated in that sort of way. But there's never anything wrong with realizing something is going wrong in your life, and is there anything that you can do? And I was mentioning in that financial video that I kind of had that point where I was like, well, nothing's really ever changing with my financial situation, so I need to be the catalyst to make a change. So that can be something too when it comes to mental health and taking care of ourselves. And but yeah, like you said, the accessibility is Not good. And then this one is on birth control. She says, I've been on birth control since I was 14. One summer I had non-stop heavy periods that would drain me and then made me anemic. Birth control saved my life and my periods became shorter. Now I'm 29 and on a different medication that allows me to get my period every 3 months, and it has been helping. I still get bloated and super bad cramps that make me want to curl up in a ball with a heating pad, but not having it every month has helped. I also struggle with generalized anxiety and panic attacks. Looking back into my childhood, anxiety played a major role on not wanting to sleep over at a friend's house, dreading the worst outcomes. I've been on Zoloft for over 10 years now, and I feel like a better version of myself. I had a panic attack at work, and one of my managers said to get over it and stop crying. You can't just snap out of it. Those who don't understand what it's like to deal with anxiety shouldn't say anything. I'm lucky that I have supportive parents to turn to. And again, it kind of goes back to no one else can control your mental health. No one else is in charge of your mental health. And I know we talked about this on another episode in the Inspired Squad, but having people who have not gone through what you are going through but trying to give you advice is really challenging, because like you said, if you haven't dealt with anxiety, like the number of times in life I have been told, just be happy, just smile, just think good thoughts, you would not believe because I am now divorced, you would not believe the number of times I've had people say, just get over it, just move on, maybe go on a date. I also struggled with infertility with my ex-husband. I was not able to get pregnant. The number of people that are like, just adopt a baby, just do this, just do that. It's like, no, no. And you're not in charge of my feelings or how I work through grief or how I handle that. I'm glad that you had a good experience with birth control. I know in our last episodes we were talking about you know, some of the downsides to birth control. I have been someone who have vocally said that I have stopped hormonal birth control. So I've been talking about that a little bit as well. I know I went into it quite a bit in my last members exclusive Get Ready With Me here on YouTube. But there are also definitely positives to something like a birth control pill, apart from just, you know, an unwanted pregnancy and that sort of thing. I just love hearing you have supportive parents to turn to. Having a support system is so important, and who we surround ourselves by is also so important. You know, we have family in our life and parents and siblings. Obviously if they're supportive, it's great, but also who's around you, who's in your close circle, who are you talking to about these sort of things. I always feel like that's really important. We did also have someone write in about getting cheated on in last month's episode, and I was thinking there would be a lot of comments about that, and there definitely was, and a lot to some of these comments, so I'm going to go ahead and read through some. Read the cheating comment. I could write a book on my story. The short version is we went through IVF in 2019 to conceive after being married for 12 years and together for 17, and he had an affair with a much younger coworker while I was pregnant. It culminated in our divorce being finalized in mid-2020 when our son was a few months old. I hated my ex and his affair partner. However, I was committed to being a good co-parent for my son, as was my ex. Although bumpy at first, within weeks we found our co-parenting groove. A few months later, his extramarital affair turned relationship imploded, and over time, we slowly became friends again. Earlier this year, we started dating and have decided to remarry next month. It's countercultural for sure, and sometimes I feel judged for that, but then I remember that I'm following my faith. There's been a tremendous amount of healing on both of our parts. And while cheating is never acceptable, cheaters are often easy to cast as the devil and the betrayed as angels. In my experience, that is also not true. I am not justifying cheating here, rather saying that there are many types of hurt a person can cause that aren't as outwardly blatant. It took me a long time to accept my side of the street in the demise of our marriage. It would have been easy to say he cheated, so we got divorced, and that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was not nearly that simplistic, and would have ignored some pretty awful things I did in our relationship that I had to heal from. For those betrayed, my advice would not be focused on the cheater. Focus on yourself. Completely, 100%. This is the time to be so selfish with yourself and your time. Heal. Seek every resource out there. Affairrecovery.com is a good one. So is Making Peace. Get a good therapist. Don't try to make a decision now about staying or going. Don't track your partner's time. Do you really want to be a prison warden? They are already massively unhealthy, or they wouldn't have cheated. They would have just left first. Instead, take note of their actions and behaviors. If they are actually interested in saving the relationship, they'll be aggressively pursuing healing for themselves. My guess is they won't be. That kind of reflection usually comes with a rock bottom kind of cost. Also, the saving the relationship is kind of misnomer in my opinion. My relationship with my ex-husband now is vastly different than our marriage. It's unrecognizable. If it weren't, that would probably be a huge red flag. Anyway, just my rambling thoughts. Good luck, and I know the devastation. One says, from my own experience, being cheated on sucks. It destroys what you thought about yourself and what and who you thought your partner was. Your confidence is shattered, and you wonder if you were not worthy enough. I chose to forgive and ended up marrying him. And while as far as I know, there's not been another incident, 9 years later, it still randomly hits and hurts, and I question my life choices. On the other hand, I have seen growth and change, and when it comes to being a dad to his daughter, he is unimpeachable. As for me, maybe it's just how my brain works, but there will always be a struggle and never fully healed scar. Everyone copes differently and has their own threshold of what they can move on from. Hi Sam and the Sam Squad. In your latest episode, someone brought up the topic of cheating. I wanted to share my story in hopes it might help others. I'm by nature a people pleaser and often set my own happiness aside and put others' happiness first. I'm working on this. I'm also a very private person and don't often share with others. I was married in 2012. The beginning of my marriage was good. We had our struggles as any couple does, but I was happy. My husband at the time worked at a high school. It will take me far too long to give all the details, but he began mentoring a student there. This was now 2017. He began spending a lot of time with her, talking to her on the phone, and she would even come to our house. She had a bad home life, so I was trying to be kind and help her. But after a while, I started to have a bad feeling. He wanted to spend way more time with her than I felt was appropriate. Even if I was there, it felt like I wasn't. And telling other more things than he would tell me. This went on for a few years. In addition, he always told me he wanted kids and strung me along, making me think we would, just not right now. After a while, he finally told me he didn't know if he would ever want them. I tried talking to him many times about how unhappy I was and how I thought the relationship that he had with the student wasn't appropriate. He told me they were just friends and made me feel like I was in the wrong for questioning things. I would cry myself to sleep many nights feeling unhappy and wondering what I was doing wrong and why I couldn't make my relationship work. Nobody in my family ever got divorced before I was, and I was afraid of letting everyone down. I stayed longer than I should have and was unhappy for years. I asked him to go to couples therapy with me thinking we needed to work on things, and he refused. That was when I realized nothing was going to change. I didn't want to go through my life feeling unhappy, alone, and unloved. All of my family was far away, and I was completely on my own for my first time in my life. We got divorced and I moved myself into an apartment I found for myself. Thankfully, I always kept my finances separate, so I wasn't dependent on him in that way. It was an adjustment and took me time to be okay, but eventually I was much happier. People were even telling me I looked so much happier when they saw me or in pictures. My ex now lives with a girl he said they were just a friend, and they are in a relationship. They officially got together in 2021 after our divorce was finalized. It taught me that I should have trusted my gut and not doubted myself. It was trying to tell me something was wrong and I didn't want to listen to it. I took time to be on my own and learn about myself. I decided to try online dating was an interesting story all on its own. But in the end, it worked out for me. I met a great man who I dated for a year and we are now engaged. I'm not saying everyone needs to find another relationship to be happy. That's not it at all. But I know how hard it is to be alone and how hopeless you can feel at the time and that you are going through it. But in time, it does get easier and you find new things and new ways to make yourself happy. I learned a lot about myself as well as my relationship in all forms. I also learned to love myself a little more than I did before and to trust my gut. I think a lot of those are very interesting. I wanted to pull some from what I thought was kind of multiple angles of working out, not working out, the scars that are still left behind, trusting your gut. So I just wanted to pull a few and just give a few different thought points when it comes to the cheating aspect. We also had someone write in about questioning some life decisions. Here comes my dog Aries. She's like, why have you been in this room for so long? What are you doing? It's questioning some life decisions, some jobs, what city to live in, that sort of thing. So this response says, life decisions. We never know if we are making the right decision or not until we have walked that path for a while. It is easier now to research the states, cities, type of work, or specific jobs. When I was young, it was library research, word of mouth, and flying by the seat of our pants. I still find my basic way to make a decision work for me. Research as much as you can, make a list of pros and cons, and listening to my gut. If I get that sinking feeling, it's a decision to avoid. I feel we often overthink things and don't listen to ourselves enough. So we have Dear Big City Dreams. Is there a sister company within the same network that you could get a referral from your current employer or transfer? Or research the same line of work in a different town and apply for a position. Interviewing is just as much about you interviewing the employer as they interview you. Don't be afraid to ask about the culture, talk to current employees about why they love the company they work for. Or is there a way you can work remotely for the company? Especially post-COVID, employers will do everything they can to keep good employees. Or I would hate for you to feel stuck at a job you feel you love, but a town you dislike. I know I said this last month, but it can be so difficult. I lived in a location for a long time that I didn't feel I fit in at, and making my decision to move to Las Vegas was definitely very challenging. But like the first one said, we have a lot of ways to now research different areas and ways to also reach out to other people. I feel like with social media, it's definitely made it a little bit more of a communicative place. I mean, even like a series like this or a different podcast or that sort of thing, feels like sometimes there can be more outreach, or you can search, you know, anytime that I'm like going to a new city, even for like a vacation, I can search like different things to do. And I feel like there's a lot of people these days that really do want to give help and advice and, you know, share their knowledge. Definitely hard to stay in a place that you don't love or don't feel accepted in, or just don't feel like you can thrive in. So those are some of the responses that came in from last month. Again, if you have anything that you would like to share, you can always use that Google form or leave a comment. But I wanted to open it up to a few new topics that came in through the Google form as well. So thank you to everyone who has written in. And if I haven't written your response, just feel free to keep going ahead and writing in that Google form, and I just will try to get to as many as I can. Keeping these episodes about an hour long is usually my goal, or a little under. But this one says, I just turned 37, and honestly this was the hardest birthday yet. I'm not sure where I thought I would be or where I would want to be in life. By now I thought I'd be married with 2 or 3 kids. Instead, I'm a single mom to a 14-year-old son who I love more than anything since the start. I'm mourning the fact that even if I find a partner at this age, I'm not gonna have any more babies. And after being used by my last 2 relationships, I'm too jaded. I honestly just feel like I'm going to be alone forever. So having fun feels like my only option in a small town that's not really possible without talk. Oh, and living paycheck to paycheck because of inflation. Sorry, that was a lot. I really don't think, you know, I've had some responses that come in that apologize. This is not where we're apologizing. We're not apologizing in this space, okay? I feel like as women, we apologize for everything. We apologize for everything, and we don't need to. And especially in a place like this, a community setting where the goal here is to help one another. I don't feel, I want this series to be where nothing is off limits. I feel like there's so many topics, especially around women, that are more taboo or have the stigma around them. So we end up never talking about them. And then once you finally do, you feel some sort of comfort and relief that maybe someone else has gone through something similar as you, or you can just get some sort of help. So there's nothing to apologize for here in this video. And that kind of stuck out at me was, I'm mourning the fact that even if I find a partner at this age, I'm not gonna have any more babies. And that sticks out to me because, like I mentioned earlier, when I talk about my divorce or not having babies with my ex-husband, you know, especially when I talk about fertility and people say, well, just adopt, or you could have just used a surrogate, or whatever it may be, right? That doesn't take away from the fact that I get to grieve not having the life that I thought that I was going to have. You know, I was with my ex-husband since I was 19 years old. So of course I always thought about what our children would look like. And then even going through the process of realizing we weren't going to be able to conceive naturally, and we were moving over with the fertility clinics, I still always had that thought in mind of what our babies would look like. So even if I decide in the future to enter into another relationship, and if I do decide to have babies, which I'm 35, so I don't know, we would have to see, I still get to grieve that that part of my life didn't work out the way that I thought it would. And that's okay. Yes, and even if I would have stayed with my ex-husband and we would have gone an adoption route or anything else like that, I still get to feel sad that a part of my life that I envisioned didn't work out that way. So whether it be with, you know, a job, a relationship, motherhood, whatever it may be, a friendship even, if something doesn't work out the way that you have thought that it would and you've envisioned it, that's okay to be sad. We don't have to apologize for that. And we get to go through our own grief at our own time and work through it in our own way, and no one else gets to tell us, I know, no one else gets to tell us that that's wrong or how they would do it. It doesn't matter. Again, going back to no one else is in charge of our mental health. No one else is in charge of our inner thoughts. So thank you for sharing. Another one says, Sam, I'm having a hard time lately. It seems like it's just one thing after another. Your videos have really helped, even if it's just escape from reality for a few minutes, so thank you. Well, thank you. And thank you for writing in that response and for watching my videos. And one thing that I think is important, and it kind of goes back to one of the first responses about going through a hard time and really looking at your life. One thing that I think is really important, especially if you are going through a hard time, is what can you do that does bring you joy? Whether it be watching some YouTube videos, maybe it's a favorite TV show, or reading a book, or going for a walk, or cooking your favorite meal, or knitting, or coloring, or whatever it may be. Sometimes we do just have to have that escape from life for just a little bit. We all go through hard situations. We all go through hard times. We all go through times where it feels like things are just so heavy. What can we do that brings us joy, even if it is just for a few minutes, and we can feel a little bit of relief? I would encourage you to maybe write some of those down. Like, I know what they are for me, and sometimes when it just is all feeling a little bit too much, those are some of the staples that I go back to. So maybe think about what that looks like for you and how you can incorporate it in when you're kind of going through those harder times. Next one says, I've been really struggling with my career and life in general. My husband and I chose to go through fertility treatments to have a child, and successfully became pregnant at the beginning of this year. Because of hormonal changes and the exhaustion brought on by pregnancy, I started struggling at work. It really stressed me out and made me worried for my baby and my own health, so I was able to get a desk position with the help of my doctor. My work punished me for the mistakes I made months ago, and they continue to use it against me, even though I've tried to show I'm still a good employee. I used to like my job, but now I just feel unwanted, and they've made me feel like a bad worker. To top it off, last week we had to put our dog down due to permanent health issues he was struggling with. My husband and I now want to move to another state with hope that I can start over, but I just feel so discouraged. I don't know what to do, but I just feel like I lost the life I had, and it made me think that maybe we shouldn't be having a baby anymore. I feel like there's a lot to that, and I'll definitely look forward to the responses that come in, because while I'm someone who has not been pregnant, so I can't speak on how that feels or the changes, it's something that I've heard so many women talk about, and I think something, quite honestly, that I don't think is respected enough. Pregnancy is hard, and that's just from me, like, watching other women experience pregnancy. And like you said, the hormonal changes, the exhaustion, and that's just the pregnancy part. I mean, then we get it obviously into the actual birth, and then what comes afterwards. There's so much, and I have so much respect for mothers and who have gone through that and who are still able to have careers, because I feel like a lot of those get stacked up on women who do also have children and also work at the same time. And there's just so much that I feel like is not respected with motherhood and with pregnancy. And it really, again, speaking as someone who's not a mom, it makes me very frustrated on all of your behalf. But especially when it comes to the workplace, you know, I don't know the personal situation or where it is that you work, but that seems like a very toxic work environment. I don't know what an HR situation looks like for that one. That to me is, I feel like, bordering on discrimination. So I don't know, that's probably a whole other topic, and maybe some other people are going to be a little bit more well-versed on this, but it's so hard because pregnancy, and especially, you know, going through the fertility treatments, it should be such an exciting time. So to have to now be struggling with a job, with a potential move, and just kind of making you question so many things, I think is so incredibly unfair. It doesn't sound like you were just wanting to slack on at work just for the fun of it and just doing whatever. So I feel a lot of anger on your behalf, but I hope that you are able to keep your spirits up when it comes to that, and be able to have, you know, a positive rest of your pregnancy experience, and hoping nothing for the best in this outcome. Another response says, "Hi Sam, I've loved your content for years and love seeing how you've come into your own. We're the same age and early on in our marriages we were in the same place. I was very fortunate to have a daughter in 2020 after deciding we are ready to try. My husband is thinking about kid number 2. We've always agreed to never be outnumbered by children, and I'm leaning towards no. So many people say you have the second kid for your first, and that's how I'm feeling. She's such a great kid, super smart, but she's a lot. Terrible 2 mood swings are unreal. I know it would be another C-section and then 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, only taking 12 weeks off work, but that's a shorter phase of life. I guess what I'm looking for is feedback from only children as adults on whether or not they regret not having someone else. We're not super outgoing people, and I worry about her not having a support system since we live really far away. That my husband often works nights and weekends, so it's a lot of parenting solo time." Again, I'll be curious to read the responses, not only from those who were only children, but from those who have either 1, 2, or multiple babies, because that's not something that I can really speak on. But again, kind of going back to like, I don't feel like pregnancy is that respected. It sounds like, to me, sometimes I hear like, oh, you should just like have another baby. Or I know some, like, being married, it was always like, oh, so when are you gonna have a baby? There's so much that goes into that. Like you said, another C-section, breastfeeding, only taking the 12 weeks off work, all of that, everything that goes into that is such a major decision. And we've kind of touched on like gut feelings, especially talking about the cheating. Maybe if your gut is telling you something, that's worth exploring a little bit more, or having those types of conversations with your husband, because kind of always the hard part is the man doesn't have to go through the changes that women experience during pregnancy and after pregnancy, and what goes into your body and careers and all of that. Like you said, that the husband often works nights and weekends, so it's a lot of parenting solo time. So it sounds like there's just a lot of really big decisions to be made. Obviously, probably not some to take lightly. But another one says, "Thank you so much for starting this series and creating a safe space for us to express our struggles and celebrate our triumphs. These days, I'm simply proud of myself for getting out of bed. I've had the most challenging 2 years of my life. COVID took my business. My birth mom passed from COVID complications. My grandfather, who raised me, passed the day after my wedding. My parents moved away. In between these events, I also got married to my best friend and we moved into our first home. I'm in the process of rebuilding my business, and although things are starting to look up, I can't seem to get past the sadness and regret that seems to constantly loom over me. My grandfather was my favorite person on earth, and the days are just empty without his bright light. I feel like every morning the alarm goes off, I relive those 2 horrible phone calls over and over again. I have sought out a grief counselor and I count my blessings constantly, but my heart just hurts all the time. Any advice, or to even know I'm not alone in sadness, would be so helpful." I definitely don't feel like you are alone there. There are certain situations in life that are so much harder to just move on from. And like I had said, even just me being told, just move on, just get over it, just smile, just be happy. It doesn't work like that. I'll say it again, no one else is in charge of your mental health. No one else understands all the feelings that you have going on inside of you. And then I think to add in the pandemic and everything that it changed, I know I'm still feeling shook from everything that happened. And I get into a lot of conversations with my friends where we talk about the day everything shut down. I feel like that's one of those days like no one will forget. I remember where I was when I heard the NCAA basketball tournament was getting canceled, and I was like, oh, this is a big deal. What is going on? I remember all the things that were taken away from me during that time. But I also remember all the instability, the fear, the unknown. I think that there are going to be ramifications and ripples from COVID-19 for years and years and years to come. It changed so many people. It changed the world. I don't think it's easy just to snap out of it and go back to normal. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But I think it's good you said you did seek out a grief counselor, which I think is a great thing. And I hope in time things start to look up. I just have a couple more responses here that I want to read. One says, "Samantha, your journey is inspiring. Despite all the hardships, you bounce back. We have similar journeys, but I am older than you. I spent my 30s trying to have a baby because I thought it was what I was supposed to do. And I wanted that baby. I did a lot of fertility treatments for years. Nothing was successful and it was all on me. This led to depression, weight gain, hormonal imbalance, and I spent my 40s recovering from the fertility treatment and dealing with the aftermath. My marriage suffered, as I'm sure yours did. I was the one who was unfaithful. I don't make excuses for it, nor do I blame only myself. It was a cry for help. I was in therapy, on meds, and still suffering. I developed fibromyalgia and arthritis. I was married for 24 years. Unfortunately, the relationship I left my husband for did not last, and I am now on my own for the first time since I was 22. I moved myself and my precious kitties 1,000 miles. All of that sounds very sad indeed, but let me tell you the good news. My ex and I are now besties. While I understand his need for a new love in life, he has made room in his life for me because we worked really hard to maintain a good, solid relationship. We support each other in all endeavors and maintain a healthy relationship. Here's one more thing. Seeing people my age with all the issues surrounding their children, etc. has made me grateful. Yes, grateful. I do not have kids. I know it doesn't sound nice, but after years of living childless and can learn to be grateful for what I have now. I'm not saying that's where you are, but it does get better. Also, I'm not making any assumptions about you or your life or your feelings. Just wanted you to know I'm now living alone and finally discovering my true identity. It's going to be okay. Well, thank you for writing that in. If anyone is new here, you know, I've mentioned in this video, but went through infertility, went through divorce, and me and my dog, who just snored very loudly, moved from Iowa to Las Vegas. And starting over is hard, especially in your mid-30s. And like I said, I don't know what life will look like. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's interesting to read about depression, weight gain, hormonal imbalance, and recovering from the fertility treatment, because that's something that I'm going through now. I've realized recently how out of sync, out of balance my hormones are. And my doctor said it's probably from going on birth control, off birth control, on fertility medications, off fertility medications. Then I went back on birth control. Women's health is a topic I know we've discussed in these videos before too, and I have just in my regular videos, but I think it's something that is not well known enough. I think that it's something that women are not educated enough on, and it's hard because it can affect us, and it can affect us for a really long time. I'm doing a lot of things right now to try to get my hormones balanced, and it's hard and it's frustrating because I just feel like as a woman, like I went through so much in the fertility process, and it's still affecting me now. Thank you for saying that. You're living alone but discovering your true identity, and it's gonna be okay. Because sometimes I just really need to hear that too. All right, I have one more for us and then we will wrap it up. This one says, I'm 24, I've never been on a date, been kissed, or had any romantic experiences. When I was younger, I genuinely thought no one could ever be interested in me. To this day, I still find it somewhat difficult to comprehend. I'm one of the first to encourage people to be known and loved. Connection is so important, but I can't quite get there myself. Even thinking about it makes me super nervous. I know some of this fear and reluctance to approach men is related to childhood traumas, but I'm in this weird space where I see my friends starting to settle down with their partners, and I want that for myself, but feel frozen and unable to pursue it. I've been attending counseling for the past year and nothing has changed. It just feels like I'm stuck. So I'm going to be very curious to get some responses on this one as well, because I know quite a few people in life who I feel like could relate to this. So I'm wondering if anyone who is watching this right now would be able to write in, whether via the forum or the comment section. I know that you have mentioned like some childhood traumas, and I feel like everyone kind of deals with their past traumas in different ways, but it definitely doesn't shock me. And even the more that I hear from other people saying that they've kind of chosen to not be in relationships or go down that path, I feel like to me nowadays I don't find it as surprising as I might have even just a few years ago, and just really starting to realize that people, we make our own decisions. We want to be able to make our own decisions over our bodies and our relationship and everything else in our lives. And I know you said that you've been attending counseling for the past year and nothing has changed. One thing I'll say about that is, again, I think I said it earlier, but if you are not like connecting with a therapist or a counselor. You don't necessarily have to stick with them or even stick with that form of therapy. There's a lot of different forms of counseling and therapy out there, and some work better for others. So maybe even starting to think about maybe making a change there might be something as well. But I'll be very curious to get in some of the responses. Like I said, that Google form is always linked, or you can always leave comments as well. I would encourage you to check out the comment section because they are so phenomenal in these videos. Especially, I really see from so many other women the passion and the desire to help one another and watch each other succeed and grow, and being able to share our stories, I think, is something that is so important. So thank you to everyone who has been supporting this series. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Inspired Squad. I will see you next month. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I hope you also consider subscribing before you go. We'll see you in our next video.